Today we're going to be talking about tracking PPP loans in QuickBooks Online, specifically for QuickBooks Online Plus. The reason for that is we're going to be using the classes feature in QuickBooks Online, which is only available in Plus and Advanced. So if you do have QuickBooks Online Essentials, you can still track. Just reference my other video of how to track PPP loan stuff in QuickBooks Online Essentials. I'll show you a way to do it without using classes. So we're going to go through the receipt of the loan itself into your bank account, tracking the expenses that should be related to the PPP loan for potential forgiveness, and then ultimately at the end, whether you get forgiven for all of the PPP loan or for a portion of it. We're going to go through how to record that as well in QuickBooks Online. The first thing you're going to make sure that you want to have set up in your QuickBooks Online is in your chart of accounts. You're going to want to create a loan account for the PPP loan itself. Even if you believe that the loan is going to ultimately be forgiven, you still want to be tracking that as a loan payable. So in order to create that, you're going to look into your the top right here in this gear icon. Then under settings, you're going to see your chart of accounts here. Now on the top right, you'll see new. So we're going to click that. And then we're going to be creating a liability. I think ask your accountant which is preferred. I think it's easier to make it a long-term liability from the start. And the reason for that is if only portion of the loan ends up being forgiven, if you have it as a short-term liability, you'll have to reclassify that as a long-term liability. So it might be easier to just do it long-term from the start. But again, ask your accountant and see what they would recommend for you. So we can make it a long-term liability. Just make it other long-term liability. We can name it PPP loan payable. And if you want, you can put the name of the bank as well. So we can save and close that. Now that we have that loan account created, we're going to create a transaction for the actual deposit of the loan itself. So in order to do that, we're going to create a bank deposit in QuickBooks Online. And in order to get there, if you look into the top left corner here under the new, and then you'll see under other, you'll see bank deposit. We're going to be using Chase Bank today. And let's say we're going to be saying that this was on May 1st that we received these funds. If you don't have your bank as a vendor, you can add them really quickly here by doing this. You can just add new customer and save. And then under the account, this is where we're going to choose that account that we just created for the PPP loan payable. We're going to say that we received $50,000. So we can go ahead and save and close this. Now I want to show by looking at that transaction we just did of what actually happened on your books. So now if you look at the transaction journal here, see that it debited the $50,000 into your bank account, and then it credited the $50,000 into that loan payable that we created. So it's increasing both the loan payable as well as the bank account. And then whenever that deposit hits into your banking feed here, you should be able to easily match it up to this transaction, this deposit that we just created here. So once we have that taken care of, we have the funds in the bank account. Now the next step would be actually tracking the expenses as we go. We're going to make this one for 8 weeks, so that we can track to see if we're going to be eligible for full or partial forgiveness. So we're going to be using the classes features in QuickBooks Online, which is available in QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced. So we're going to create a class for PPP and then subclasses in order to keep it clean whenever we're tracking the expenses and running the reports to keep those numbers. In order to get that set up, again, if you look into the top right gear icon here, and then under lists, you can click on all lists. You'll see the list for classes. And if you don't see the list for classes here, then you should go into the gear icon company settings and then turn on that option to track classes if you don't already do that. So once it's turned on, then you'll see the classes option here. You can click on that. And then we're going to create some new classes here, like I mentioned before. So again, in the top right, you can click on new. We're going to name the first one just PPP Expenses. And then we're going to create some subclasses to go along with this, so we can hit new again. We can name this one PPP rent. So make sure at the time, because this is changing all the time, make sure that you know exactly what needs to be tracked. For today, we're going to track rent, utilities, as well as payroll. You can click on the box here that says is subclass, and then you can choose the parent class, which is going to be the PPP expenses. We can save that. New again. Make this one for payroll. Again, subclass for PPP. This one are going to be utilities. Again, subclass PPP. So now we have the PPP expenses class as well as the subclasses for payroll, rent, and utilities. Now, the next step from here is that for the next, whether it's 8 weeks or 24 weeks, whenever you're tracking those expenses, you're going to want to choose one of those classes to classify it as, and I'll show you how to do that now. So whether you're doing it through new bills, new expenses, or whether you're doing it in your bank feed, or if you have an external system for payroll, things like that, you just want to always make sure that you're assigning a class to those transactions. So we're going to do a few expenses now, and I'll show you how to do that. So if you go to new and then expense. So the first one we're going to do May 1st and say that this one was for rent. For $1,000. And then right here is where you choose in this class option here that you'll now see. You can click on the down arrow and you'll see these PPP expenses here. So we're going to, because this is rent, we're going to choose the PPP rent option here. We can save and close that. And just so you see as well, if you're entering bills, for example, you can do the same thing. So let's enter a utility bill here. And then same thing when entering a bill, you'll see this option here for the class. So again, this is utilities here, so we can choose the PPP utilities option here. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to create a bunch of mock expenses and bills here, and then we can come back once I do all that for these next 8 weeks, and then I can come back and show you the reports and how to find those numbers and to see where you're at with your PPP loan expenses. I have those expenses in there. I put in some payroll expenses, rent, utilities, and I put the classes associated with that like I showed you before. So you want to make sure, of course, you're doing that as you go. So we're going to assume now that it's the end of the 8-week period, and we need to track and see what our expenses were that could be eligible for PPP loan forgiveness. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom report. I would recommend doing this from the beginning so that you can keep track of it kind of as you go, week by week, month by month, whatever works for you. And I'm going to show you how to customize that report right now. So to get to reports in the left-hand column here, under reports. So the first thing we're going to do to start our custom report is we're going to use the template of profit and loss by class. So if you search here, you can just type in by class and it'll show up. So right here, profit and loss by class. And then we're going to create a report and save it for customization again that you can run at any time. So we're going to do a custom date. So this starts on the date that you received your funds, and in this example was May 1st. And then whenever your end period is for those expenses, in this particular case is going to be June 25th. Now once the dates are chosen, this is going to stay displayed by classes. And then we can go ahead and hit this customize button right here in order to further customize it. Here you can choose cash or accrual. We're going to do cash today. So once we chose that, we're going to hit this filter button right here and then click on class. And then with this down arrow right here, rather than doing all, we're going to choose that parent PPP expenses class right here. And then we can run the report. So that way, it'll only show those PPP expenses as we've been classifying them. Now, of course, if you want, you can rename the report itself right here. So we can name this PPP expenses. And then once we have this report created, then we can go ahead and hit save customization here. PPP expenses, if you have a group or anything like that, you can do it here and then hit save. And then just so you'll always be able to see this report. If you go back into the reports here, this custom reports tab, you'll see this PPP expenses that we just ran right here. Also, to keep in mind, depending on what browser you use, if it's Google Chrome, for example, you can create a bookmark of this report and put it up in your bookmarks in the top. So that way you'll easily be able to, at any point during the week, during the month, you can see in real time where you're at with these PPP expenses, so you can see how much you, at that point, may be eligible for forgiveness. So as you can see with the report, it's a really clean report here. You'll see the total PPP expenses right here, and then you'll see it broken down by utilities, rent, and payroll. And of course, everything you can click on. So if you need to see all your payroll expenses, you can click on these links. If you need to see all your utility expenses by vendor, you can click on these links. And this should be a really clean and easy way in order for you to get those numbers that you need in order to apply for forgiveness. One other thing I'd like for you to keep in mind is that you can run a report in order to kind of see if there's anything that might have fallen through the cracks. And what I mean by that, if there's any potentially eligible expense that hasn't been classified under one of these classes. So what you can do is you can go back into your report screen here and then run that same standard profit and loss by class report. And same thing, you can just run it, choose the dates here of when you're eligible for forgiveness. You can run the report. And then what you can do is the general expense categories that everything should be under. So utilities, payroll, and rent is where you should be looking. And if you see in that time frame that something under one of those expense categories has this not specified for a class, you may want to look at that and see if you should be adding that to your PPP expenses report. So here, for example, we see that under utilities and electric, we see that there's $100 here that's not specified by class. So we can click on that. And then once we're looking at that expense, we see that it's an electric bill that's within that date time frame of when you should be tracking those expenses for eligibility for forgiveness. And you see that there's no class associated with it. So at this point here, you can go ahead and choose that class of PPP utilities and then save and close it. And that'll recategorize it into the PPP class so that when you run that report, in order to get those numbers, everything is included, which should be included. So now we've tracked everything. We have our numbers here. So now it's time to, once the loan ultimately gets forgiven, in order to record that in QuickBooks Online. So again, we're going to look at this report, and we see right here that we have $29,650 of eligible PPP expenses. Now, if you recall, we originally got $50,000 in funding. So we're going to get, in this particular case, a partial forgiveness. So I can show you how to record that. Same procedure if you get full forgiveness, just different numbers. So first, you're going to make sure that you have some sort of other income category in your chart of accounts. So again, in the top right gear icon, you can go under chart of accounts. And you can look and see by type here under income to see if you have anything. In this particular case, we do not. So we can go ahead and create another report here, or another account here. So by clicking new, and then we can go under income. Other income. And it doesn't really matter what we choose here. We can just do other miscellaneous. And then we can just name this other income. Close. Now we're going to create a journal entry whenever we ultimately get forgiven for that $29,650. So, and we're going to categorize that as other income, and we're going to offset it by the $50,000 loan. And I can show you how to do that now. So if you hit new in the top left again here, You'll see an option of the other for journal entry. And let's say this was forgiven sometime in August. You can name this PPP loan forgiveness. So first we're going to debit the loan account itself. So debiting a loan liability account is essentially decreasing that loan. So again, if you had full forgiveness here, then you would do the full $50,000. In this particular case, we do not get the $29,650. And then the credit is going to be for that other income. So we're just going to increase the other income by that amount. I would put definitely descriptions in here so that it's still under discussion of how all of this is going to be treated in terms of whether this is taxable income or not. So you just want to make sure, so whenever year end comes and your accountant is looking at your other income, that it's known that this income is associated with the PPP loan forgiveness, so it can be classified accordingly. So we can go ahead and save and close this. And I can show you basically what that looks like in your balance sheet. So you'll see now under the long-term liabilities, you'll see that PPP loan payable for $20,350. And so what's that showing is you originally got the $50,000 in the loan, you got $29,650 that was forgiven, and you knew that by tracking it through those classes. So now you have a remaining loan payable of $20,350. So that is an option for you if you're using QuickBooks Online Plus or Advanced, of using their classes system in QuickBooks Online in order to easily and cleanly track those PPP loan expenses, how to record the initial deposit into your bank, and then ultimately how to record whenever you get forgiven for full or partial amounts of that PPP loan. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And as always, if you have any questions or like any more one-on-one help, anything like that, just let me know. You can leave a comment down below or send me an email. Thank you.